set out to make this video, I find myself thinking of remarkable events. Some are positive and some are not so positive. But remarkable means something so extraordinary as to invite a comment. I want to start with 1844 that had 3 remarkable events. 1, a meteor shower. 2, May 24th, 1844. We have Samuel Morse, the guy who invented Morse code. And the first message he typed out was, "What God hath wrought." Now, 2 days prior to that, May 22nd, 1844, there was an event that occurred similar to John the Baptist. Please take a minute and think about that. Those are the positive ones. Now, June 1994 is another remarkable event. That's the O.J. Simpson murder trial. And that was the first time I experienced polarization and saw cognitive dissonance in action. For those of you who may not be familiar with this historical event, a good percentage of the population was cheering over the not guilty verdict. All the evidence actually pointed to guilt. The defense did manipulate the situation. They painted O.J. as a victim. I don't think justice was on their mind or anything like that. It was just winning. I believe the people who were cheering were in pain because of how they had been treated. And that pain blinded them to the fact that this not guilty verdict was not an example of justice for the black person. It blinded them to another injustice. The final moments of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson, and the pain it brought to them, their families, friends, and the American people. Now we flash forward to 2019. In that fall, my dad died after having lived some 30-some years with a bad heart. Science made this gift possible. I'm so thankful. Now, 3 weeks after that, we had COVID, followed by the chaos of 2020 and the attack on democracy. Those may not seem remarkable, but they do stand out, and they do invite a comment, and that is what remarkable means. Now that brings me to the remarkable event that inspired this video project. The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate and his son Daniel Mate. You can see how much I like the book because I wrote down all these pages. And I did that because I borrowed the book from a friend and I didn't want to mark up her book. I usually highlight and make notes in the margins, and I didn't want to do that, so I wrote the pages down, and I might get my own book. Now, the doctor wrote the book with his son, and if I remember correctly, the doctor has 40 plus years of experience in treating people. I would say he made the connection between trauma and disease and the behaviors that are creating the world we live in. Forgive me, I'm trying to read my notes I made. I feel he spent his time with his patients asking them questions about their childhood. And And that is how he arrived at the conclusion about trauma creating the world. I was particularly moved by his acknowledgement of the suffering experienced when one is denied autonomy over their body. I also found myself moved by learning how a developing fetus is affected by parents experiencing financial or other stressful factors. Without going back to the book, I can't relay that suffering adequately. Only that as I read that section, my heart cried out, we'd be more compassionate in our policy making if we knew how that life is impacted while developing in the womb and after its birth in this world. I also liked how the doctor defined different kinds of trauma. We have capital T trauma and small t trauma. Before we get into capital T trauma and small t trauma, let's talk about what trauma is. It's something that happens within a person as a result of harmful events. And I'm reading from the book as I explain this. So capital T trauma occurs when things happen to vulnerable people that should not have happened. Examples he gives are a child being abused, violence in the family, a rancorous divorce, or the loss of a parent. And the small t trauma is the universal trauma, something that most of us experienced. I guess they're mostly seemingly ordinary events, or what a researcher called the less memorable but hurtful and far more prevalent misfortunes of childhood. So small t trauma is caused by seemingly normal events like peers bullying, being bullied by peers, the casual but harsh repeated comments of well-meaning parents, or even a lack of sufficient emotional connection from an adult. Now, along with defining trauma, one of the things I liked was that he shared stories that stress the behaviors we develop as a result of that trauma were not bad or wrong, because they helped us survive that experience. They had a purpose. But as time goes by, those behaviors cease to serve us in a positive way. We must work to let them go and return to our true selves, who we were before the trauma. And I can relate to that because I experienced a small t trauma. I no longer remember the event that brought on my frustration or anger, or what I actually said. Only the words of an adult telling me I didn't mean what I had said, or I didn't really feel that way in response to it. And it resulted in me feeling afraid to share my feelings. As a child, I also had no problem letting go of unused possessions or the desire to buy unnecessary items. I was told the item was cute or it was a gift, so I couldn't get rid of it. I bought items I didn't want to because the adult didn't hear me say I don't need it or I can get by without it. They never actually heard me say no. And I thought I wanted to be left alone. So I bought the item. Because that was, in my mind, that was how the adult would leave me alone. But I didn't know I had other options either. And then as years later, as I paid attention to my feelings experienced during certain events, I realized I really want to be seen and understood. And that childhood experience taught me a false narrative about material possessions, which led me to suffering unnecessarily and being unproductive. Because I felt like every unused item in my house had to go. My happiness depended upon it. Now I know. I'm reading my notes. Now I know my happiness is in me knowing myself and my Creator. Anything else is secondary, transient happiness. The remarkable events I mentioned earlier, childhood trauma and resulting behaviors, along with paying attention to feelings. Yes, paying attention to my feelings gave me that understanding. In the years since, I have also came to see that silence doesn't serve me and the world, so I'm working to change this. Now, as a child, I never understood why adults reacted that way. Today, I think I do. They don't know that feelings are a guide for the individual to learn and make choices. I'm not saying all adults, I'm just saying if in that particular situation, the adult couldn't have known or understood that. This being true, no feeling is ever wrong or bad. It's information. As for shopping and getting rid of material possessions, I would say the adults didn't realize their discomfort was an opportunity to learn about themselves and a new way of being in this world. Introspection is key because one who goes into the silent place would see that a child is hurting when they use certain words, respond with compassion. And also teaching the child to ask questions about the situation so they can learn and make different choices. That would result in an outcome that didn't generate suffering. Introspection also would have allowed the adults to know that a child who doesn't want to buy items they don't need or is ready to part with them is a good thing. Not only that, it's an opportunity to teach about generosity and other things as opposed to just getting rid of something at the Goodwill. My personal experience confirmed the truth of the book. That brings me to the chapters about overcoming trauma and healing. Those two are full of wonderful stories and ways to facilitate healing. I invite you to read the book.